I'm Brendan Pettigrew and I've been a property expert since the 1990s. You'd imagine that I've seen a few ups and downs in the market, whether it be credit crunches or, global pandemics. But I still live and work in the Warwickshire and Solihull areas, and I thought it would be helpful to let people know exactly what is happening in the property market at the moment. With everything that's happening in the world, you might be wondering what's happening to local house prices and what's the house price outlook for 2023. Now, I've always found that there are a small amount of elements that really affect house prices, whether it be recessions, interest rates, global events, or indeed, the supply of housing stock. So where no one has a crystal ball on house prices, I just wanted to put a bit of perspective on some of the facts behind the headlines. We all know that the job of the media is to, increase viewers and sell advertising. So it's important to speak to some of the experts on the coalface to get a better handle on things. So anything that I'm about to say or show you today is backed up with facts. So if you go onto websites like home.co.uk, you'll be able to see lots of the, graphs that I'll show you on this video. So before we look ahead, it's quite important to look back and see what house prices have done since 2006. Going back to 2006, bearing in mind we have had credit crunches, Brexit and global pandemics, it looks a pretty steady increase over the decades. Now, the spike towards 2022 was due to the recent pandemic, where Britain came to appreciate how important our homes were. This was most likely due to lockdowns where we couldn't actually go out and the new era of working from home. So in that time, I found that more people considered, building home gyms or offices, extending their homes, or indeed moving house altogether. There's other really interesting trends where you saw people move out of the towns and cities into the countryside where they wanted to enjoy the outdoors more. Now, where you saw the spike in house prices during the pandemic, it could be perhaps blamed on the government misjudging the support that it gave the housing market and house buyers in the way of, suspended stamp duty. All of this extra printing of money, trillions of pounds, were given out free, supporting companies, paying furlough. So it was quite a lucrative time for a lot of people. But with all of that support, we also had historically low interest rates. And when I say historically low, anything sub, 3% interest rates were, on the balance of things, incredible. Did you know that the Bank of England was invented in the mid-1600s, and the average interest rate, Bank of England base rate, during that whole time, between the 1600s and now, the average Bank of England base rate has been 6%. So this is what people mean when they say historic low interest rates. So the next thing I want to talk about are interest rates, or what the media would have you believe, the mortgage crisis which is going on at the moment. So again, if you go onto Money Supermarket, did you know that there isn't a crisis on interest rates? I put the figures in at a 95% mortgage, and did you know that if you only had 5% deposit to buy a property, you can get interest rates at, thereabouts 3.5%. The more deposit you put down, the better interest rates you might get, but that doesn't look like a mortgage crisis to me. So if you compare the interest rates calming down, now the markets have, got used to more stability in the UK after the mini budget. If you combine the correction in the house prices having come down from the spike of the pandemic, then, it's brought a close correlation between what people are paying now and what they were paying a few years ago. So with that in mind, all of the facts point towards the housing market being, still very strong. Now, where we talk about a price correction, what does that actually mean? Now, here's some interesting figures. It's important to think about the spike in house prices due to the rush to buy homes in the pandemic. Obviously, if there's a lot of demand, then it's going to increase the price of of a property. So now, if prices do go down in properties, here are some interesting facts. So if house prices decrease by 5%, it would bring us back to the prices of January 2022. If they decrease by 10%, it just brings us back to July 2021. If they reduce by 15%, which even in the credit crunch they only came down by 8% in our area, but if they came down by 15%, it would bring us back to January 2021. And if they came down by the record in the UK of 20% this year, then it would take us back to August 2020. So when you put it into perspective, it doesn't actually seem very long ago that we were paying these prices for properties, but of course these wouldn't be the headlines in the papers. So when I use the word correction, basically I use it because it points towards prices calming back to figures that they should have been if we didn't have the recent boom. So let's talk about the final element of what would affect house prices, and that would be the impending recession. So interestingly today, the media have just reported that the last quarter growth in the country was 0.1%. And they say surprisingly 0.1%, so our economy grew in the last quarter. Now, a recession requires 2 quarters of negative growth to qualify for what they call a recession. And a recession means that, the UK's companies' profits shrink to the amount where they have to start laying off staff and cutting costs. So basically we're shrinking, we're receding. Then higher employment would mean consumer spending slows and it brings down inflation at a higher rate. So it's the second tool to bringing down inflation versus rising interest rates. Now, the current rate of unemployment is 3.7%. Now, this is compared when I first started my career back in the 1990s, where the unemployment rate was 10.3%. So this points towards unemployment being still very low. And also another very interesting fact on unemployment is that even at 3.7% in the UK, there's more job vacancies than there are people unemployed. So it could be valid reasons or people's just decisions not to work or not liking the jobs that are available. So I'm not saying that there won't be a recession this year, but there won't be one for the next 6 months, if you like, because obviously we need to record 2 quarters of negative growth. Now, the other main point of concern, other than mortgages, unemployment, recessions and house price trends, would be still the rate of inflation. And this has been heavily affected by the cost of energy. But you've probably seen yourself that, gas and oil prices are now coming down to a more reasonable level. Even if I pull up to the petrol pump, they're down to £1.50 per litre instead of £2 per litre, which is, that's quite a significant drop since the, peak of oil and petrol prices, no longer than sort of 6 months ago. So with gas and oil prices now coming down and with more warmer weather hopefully on the way, hopefully we'll then see, us needing to use less energy and food prices coming down, which I know is a concern to many people as well. So obviously we do have to keep a look at inflation too, but I can only see that going one way now, and that's down. So I hope that's helped you understand more of the nuts and bolts and what happens with the logistics of the housing market and things that affect it. I don't think it is as severe as the media is having you believe, but they want to sell newspapers. I think the facts out there is that economic conditions are getting better. If you want any more information about your own personal property, then I'm happy to speak to you about it. So in the meantime, take care, and if you're having a bad day, think about tea time at Harry and Meghan's house. Take care.